Welcome back. This channel exists because of your support. Subscribe, hit like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Now let's get into the story. You know what's funny about the word hovering? It's what people call you when you pay attention. When you notice patterns, when you ask follow-up questions, when you refuse to accept obvious lies as truth. That's exactly what my wife called me last Tuesday evening, right after I asked why she'd been working late 4 nights in a row, but her office building was dark when I drove past at 9 p.m. I'm Kyle Brennan, 35 years old, and I've been married to Jennifer for 7 years. Jen, as everyone calls her. She's a marketing consultant, brilliant at her job, always networking, always meeting new clients. At least, that's what she told me. And for 7 years, I believed everything she said because that's what you do when you love someone. You trust them. Tuesday night changed all of that. I was sitting on our couch in our Capitol Hill condo, the one I'd bought 2 years before we got married, watching the lights of Pike Street below. It was 10:15 when I heard her key in the lock. She walked in wearing her professional outfit, a navy blazer and dress pants. But something was off. Her hair was slightly mussed, her makeup smudged at the corners, and she was wearing perfume I didn't recognize. Something expensive and musky that definitely wasn't the light floral scent she usually wore. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice casual. "How was the late night at the office?" She froze for just a second, then recovered. "Exhausting. Client presentation ran long." "That's interesting," I said, standing up and walking to the window. "Because I had to drop off those contracts downtown around 9, and I drove past your building. It was completely dark. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. "What are you saying?" Her voice had an edge to it now, defensive and sharp. "I'm saying your office was dark, Jen. No lights on any floor. So where were you really?" She threw her purse on the chair with more force than necessary. "I can't believe this. You're checking up on me now? Driving past my office to make sure I'm where I say I am?" "I wasn't checking up on you. I was driving past and noticed." "Get out of my space, Kyle." She cut me off, her voice rising. "I'm sick of you hovering over every little thing I do. You're suffocating me. I'm a grown woman, and I don't need you monitoring my every move like some kind of security guard." I stood there looking at her, really looking at her, and something inside me just clicked. This woman, the one I'd been married to for 7 years, the one I'd trusted completely, was standing in our living room at 10:15 at night, smelling like another man's cologne, and she was calling me the problem. I walked over to the window and looked out at the Space Needle in the distance, its lights bright against the night sky. Behind me, I could feel her expecting me to do what I always did. Apologize, back down, start an argument that would go nowhere. But something had shifted in me, something fundamental. I turned around and smiled at her. "You want space," I said calmly. "That's interesting." She blinked, clearly not expecting that response. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you're absolutely right. You deserve space. And starting right now, you have all the space you could ever want." Her face showed confusion mixed with suspicion. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about giving you exactly what you asked for. From this moment on, you can do whatever you want, wherever you want, with whoever you want. I won't ask a single question. No more hovering. No more suffocating you with my attention. You're free." She stared at me for a long moment, probably trying to figure out if this was some kind of trap. When I just kept looking at her calmly, she shrugged. "Good. Maybe now we can have some peace around here." Peace. As if the tension in our marriage was my fault. As if I was the one who'd been lying. "Absolutely," I said. "All the peace you want." She grabbed her purse from the chair and headed upstairs without another word. I heard the bedroom door close, then the shower running. I stood in the living room and glanced at the framed document on the wall near the kitchen. The deed to this condo, purchased 9 years ago, 2 years before we got married. My name, and only my name, on the title. That night, I didn't go to bed. I sat in my home office and started making notes. Over the next 3 days, I watched my wife carefully. Not because I was being controlling or possessive, but because I was gathering information. There's a difference, and she was about to learn it. Wednesday night, she came home at 11. I was reading a book in the living room. She walked in, clearly braced for questions that didn't come. "Have a good evening?" I asked without looking up. "Yes," she said cautiously. "Client dinner ran late." "Sounds productive." I turned a page. She stood there for a moment, waiting for more. When nothing came, she went upstairs. I heard her pacing in the bedroom for a while before she finally went to sleep. What she didn't know was that I'd spent my day opening a separate bank account and my evening photographing our joint account statements. Every charge, every withdrawal, every unexplained expense from the past 3 months. Thursday, she announced she had another client dinner at 7. "Don't wait up," she said, grabbing her keys. "Have fun," I replied from the kitchen, where I was making myself dinner. She paused at the door, probably confused by my lack of reaction, then left. I gave her 15 minutes, then got in my car and drove to Queen Inn. I found her car parked outside Camless, one of the most expensive restaurants in Seattle. Through the window, I could see her sitting across from a man I didn't recognize. He was leaning in close, laughing at something she said. She reached across the table and touched his hand. I took 3 photos with my phone, then drove home. That night, I accessed our phone records. We were on a family plan that I paid for every month, which meant I had every right to see the account details. What I found was enlightening. Over 200 calls and texts to a single number over the past 10 weeks. Calls that lasted hours, always late at night. Texts sent at 2 and 3 in the morning. Friday night, Jen practically glowed with confidence when she came home. She'd decided she'd won, that she'd successfully trained me to stop asking questions. "How was your day?" she asked, almost cheerful. "Productive," I said. "Very productive. I spent Friday night reviewing our credit card statements. 10 weeks of charges I'd been too trusting to question before. Dinner for 2 at expensive restaurants. Wine tastings in Woodinville. 2 charges at boutique hotels. And 1 that made my blood run cold. An $850 purchase at Benbridge Jeweler." I looked at the date. February 14th. Valentine's Day. I hadn't bought my wife jewelry for Valentine's Day. We'd agreed to skip gifts that year and take a trip in the summer instead. So who bought her an $850 necklace? Saturday morning, I woke up at 7 and got dressed. Business casual, slacks, and a button-down shirt. Jen didn't wake up until 9:30. She stumbled into the kitchen, clearly hungover from wherever she'd been the night before, and stopped when she saw me. "Where are you going?" she asked, squinting at me. "Out," I said, grabbing my keys from the hook by the door. For the first time in weeks, I saw uncertainty flash across her face. "Out where?" I paused at the door and looked back at her. She was standing in the kitchen in the same dress from last night, her makeup smeared, her hair a mess. "I'm a grown man," I said, using her exact words from Tuesday night. "I don't need to report my every move like I'm checking in with security." Her mouth opened, then closed. She hadn't expected her own words thrown back at her. I spent that Saturday at a lawyer's office in the Columbia Center building downtown. Mark Harrison, divorce attorney, came highly recommended. I showed him everything I'd found. The photos, the phone records, the credit card statements. "This is pretty straightforward," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Washington is a no-fault state, but this kind of documentation helps with asset division. The condo is in your name only? Purchased 2 years before we married. My name on the deed. Then that's your separate property. She has no claim to it." He tapped the papers on his desk. "Given this evidence, I'd expect a quick, uncontested divorce, especially if she wants to avoid this becoming public." After the lawyer, I went to the bank. I removed Jennifer from my credit cards. She was an authorized user, not a joint account holder. I opened a separate checking account and had my paychecks redirected there. The joint account stayed open, but I wasn't putting another dollar into it. When I got home that evening at 8, my phone showed 15 missed calls from Jen, all from the last 2 hours. She was pacing the living room when I walked in. The moment she saw me, she pounced. "Where have you been all day? I've been trying to call you." I pulled out my phone and looked at the screen. So I see. My phone was on silent. I was busy. Busy doing what? The irony was so thick you could swim in it. This woman, who'd been lying to me for weeks, who'd told me to stop hovering, was demanding to know my exact whereabouts. "Adult things," I said, walking past her toward the stairs. "Nothing you need to worry about." She followed me upstairs, frustration radiating off her like heat. "We need to talk." "About what?" "About us. About what's been happening lately." I turned to look at her. She genuinely looked confused, like she couldn't understand why her behavior had consequences. "What's been happening is exactly what you asked for," I said, pulling off my shirt and reaching for a fresh one. "You wanted space. You wanted me to stop being hovering. You wanted me out of your face. Congratulations. You got it. But this isn't what I meant. Then you should have been more specific. That night, she tried everything. First, she attempted to start a fight, hoping I'd get emotional and give her an excuse to storm out. When that didn't work, she tried being affectionate, suddenly interested in spending time together after weeks of treating me like I was invisible. None of it worked because I wasn't playing her game anymore. Instead, I sat in my home office, door closed, and organized everything I'd found. I created a spreadsheet cross-referencing her claimed locations with actual credit card charges. The pattern was damning. Every time she said she was working late, there were charges at restaurants or hotels. Every time she claimed to be at a networking event, her Instagram showed her somewhere completely different. The social media evidence was particularly useful. She thought she was being careful with her privacy settings, but she'd made a crucial mistake. Her posts were visible to friends of friends, which meant I could see everything. Photos at bars and clubs I'd never heard of. Pictures with people I'd never met. And in one photo from 3 weeks ago, there it was, the necklace. An expensive-looking pendant she was wearing in a selfie with a man whose LinkedIn profile identified him as Greg Mitchell, corporate trainer. By Sunday night, I had a complete picture of my wife's secret life. The question wasn't whether she was cheating anymore. The question was what I was going to do about it. She came home around 11, earlier than usual. Maybe the guilt was finally getting to her, or maybe Greg had other plans. She found me in the living room, reading. "Hey," she said, trying to sound casual. "How was your day?" "Productive," I replied without looking up. "Very productive." She sat down on the opposite end of the couch, as far from me as possible while still being in the same room. After a moment of silence, she spoke. "Listen, about the other night. Maybe I was a little harsh." A little harsh. That's what she called it. Not disrespectful, not cruel, not completely out of line. A little harsh. "Don't worry about it," I said, finally looking up at her. "You were just being honest about how you feel. I appreciate honesty." The word honesty hit her like a slap. She actually flinched. "Good," she said after a pause. "I'm glad we understand each other." "Oh, we understand each other perfectly," I said, going back to my book. "Better than you realize." Monday evening, she came home early. 6:45, unusual for someone who'd been working late constantly. She'd cooked dinner, the first time in months. "I thought we could eat together," she said as I walked in. "It's been a while." We sat across from each other at the dining room table, the Space Needle visible through the window behind her. She tried to make conversation, asked about my day, laughed at things that weren't particularly funny. She was performing the role of attentive wife, trying to reset the narrative. "Are we okay?" she asked finally. "You've been acting different." "I'm giving you exactly what you asked for," I said. "Space. No hovering." "But this isn't what I meant." "Then you should have been more specific." By the following Wednesday, I was ready. I texted her at noon. "Need to discuss something important. Be home by 7. She arrived at 7:15, clearly nervous. She found me sitting at the dining room table with 3 manila folders spread out in front of me. My laptop was open, showing a detailed spreadsheet. Printed photographs sat in clear plastic sleeves. "What's all this?" she asked, her voice tight. "Have a seat," I said calmly. She sat down slowly, her eyes darting between the folders and my face. I could see her mind racing, trying to figure out what I knew. I slid the first folder across the table. "This is our joint credit card statement," I said. "The one I pay off every month. I've highlighted some interesting charges. Hotel Max, 3 separate occasions. Romano's, Canlis, the Walrus, and the Carpenter. All dinners for 2. All on nights you claimed to be working late or at client meetings." Her face had gone pale. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I slid the second folder over. "These are our phone records from the family plan. I pay for that too, which means I have every right to access the account information. You've made over 200 calls and sent countless texts to one number over the past 10 weeks. The calls last hours. The texts go out at 2, 3 in the morning." I pulled up a screenshot on my laptop and turned it toward her. "This is from your Instagram. 3 weeks ago, posted from Chateau Ste. Michelle Winery. You're tagged with someone named Greg. The same night you told me you were working late." Her hands were shaking now. "And this," I said, pulling out the final piece of evidence, "is a receipt from Benbridge Jeweler. $850 for a necklace, purchased on Valentine's Day. The same necklace you're wearing right now." Her hand went to her throat automatically, touching the pendant. I didn't buy you a necklace for Valentine's Day, Jen. So who did? She sat there in stunned silence for a long moment. Then she tried the first thing people always try when they're caught. This isn't what it looks like. I pulled out my phone and showed her the photographs from Canlis. Her and Greg, sitting close, holding hands across the table. In one photo, they were kissing. Then what is it? I asked calmly. She switched tactics immediately. Anger. How dare you spy on me? Her voice rose. This is a violation of my privacy. You're controlling and possessive, and you're driving me away. I didn't spy on you, I said, my voice level. I looked at our joint credit card statement that I pay. I reviewed our family phone plan that's in my name. I took a photo of you in a public restaurant window. Which part of that is spying? The anger crumbled. Tears started falling. Please, you don't understand. I was confused. I wasn't thinking clearly. It just happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I slid the tissue box across the table without comment. She cried for about 5 minutes, probably expecting me to soften, to comfort her, to tell her we could work it out. When I just sat there waiting, she moved to the next phase. This is exactly why I needed space, she said, her voice taking on an edge again. You're suffocating. You're always hovering. If you'd just given me room to breathe, none of this would have happened. You drove me to this. I almost laughed. I drove you to this, I repeated slowly. I drove you to lie to me every single day for 10 weeks. I drove you to spend thousands of our dollars on dates with another man. I drove you to sneak around behind my back and then call me hovering when I asked basic questions about your schedule. She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up my hand. No, you don't get to blame me for your choices. You made every single decision that led to this moment. You decided our marriage wasn't worth your loyalty. You decided I wasn't worth your respect. You decided to throw away 7 years for some corporate trainer you met at a networking event. Her face went white when I mentioned Greg by name. She hadn't expected me to know who he was. We can fix this, she said desperately. I'll end it right now. I'll call him and tell him it's over. We can go to counseling. Please, Kyle, think of everything we've built together. You already ended it, I said. You just didn't tell me. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a business card. I slid it across the table. That's my divorce attorney, Mark Harrison. He's expecting your call. She stared at the card like it was a snake. You're not serious. Deadly serious. I pulled out a second business card. This is my financial advisor. As of Monday, you've been removed as an authorized user from my credit cards. I've opened a separate checking account. Our joint account is still accessible to both of us for now, but I won't be depositing anything else into it. Her hands were shaking so hard, she could barely hold the cards. You can't just kick me out, she said, but there was no conviction in her voice. I'm not kicking you out. I'm giving you what you asked for. Freedom from my hovering presence. Space from my suffocating attention. Relief from having to look at my face every day. I leaned forward. The only difference is that you'll be getting all of that somewhere else. This is crazy, she said. We can work this out. Here's the thing about counseling, I said. It's for people who want to fix their problems. You don't have a problem. You made a choice. You chose him over me, over our marriage, over everything we built. The only problem you have now is that your choice has consequences. Please, she said, and for the first time, she sounded genuinely desperate. Don't throw away everything we had. I'm not throwing anything away, I said, standing up. You already did that. I'm just cleaning up the mess you left behind. I pulled a small envelope from my pocket and placed it on the table. What's that? She whispered. Your new key. I had the locks changed this afternoon. Your old keys don't work anymore. She stared at the envelope like she couldn't quite process what it meant. You can't do this. This is my home too. Actually, I said calmly, check the deed. It's framed on the wall in the living room if you need a reminder. My name only. I bought this condo 9 years ago, 2 years before we got married. You've been a guest for 7 years. Now you're an unwelcome one. She sat there in shock as the full reality of her situation sank in. All those months of treating me like I was the problem, and she'd never once considered that I might decide I'd had enough. Where am I supposed to go? She asked finally. You're a grown woman, I said, using her words from last Tuesday. You said you don't need to report your movements. Figure it out. She called Greg from the bedroom. I heard her through the door, her voice high and desperate. What do you mean you need to think? A long pause. I thought another pause. This is moving too fast. We've been together for 10 weeks. Her voice cracked. Fine. I understand. She came downstairs 20 minutes later with 2 suitcases packed. Her eyes were red, her face blotchy from crying. There, she said, gesturing at the luggage with something that might have been defiance. Are you happy now? Actually, yes, I said. I'm happier than I've been in months. That clearly wasn't the response she expected. She probably thought the sight of her packed bags would make me emotional, maybe even beg her to stay. I called Greg, she said, trying to sound confident. He said I can stay with him until we figure this out. Good for you. I hope you two are very happy together. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. That's it. That's all you have to say? What did you expect? Tears. Begging? You've been planning this for months. The only difference is now you're being honest about it. I walked past her toward the kitchen. She followed. You're making a huge mistake, she said. You're going to regret this. The only mistake I made was trusting you, I said, opening the refrigerator and pulling out a bottle of water. And the only thing I regret is not seeing through your lies sooner. She stood there for a moment, probably waiting for me to break down or change my mind. When neither happened, she tried one last manipulation. Fine, but don't come crying to me when you realize what you've lost. I turned around and smiled at her. A real smile, not the fake ones I'd been giving her for weeks. What I've lost is a wife who treated me like garbage, lied to my face every day, and spent our money on another man. If that's what you call a loss, then I'm the luckiest man alive. Her face went through about 5 different emotions in the span of 2 seconds. Shock, anger, hurt, confusion, and finally something that might have been respect. You're not the same person I married, she said quietly. You're absolutely right, I said. The person you married would have begged you to stay, would have blamed himself for your choices, would have spent months in therapy trying to figure out what he did wrong. I leaned against the counter. But that person was married to someone who respected him. The person standing in front of me now told me to get out of her space and called me hovering for caring about my own marriage. I gestured toward her suitcases by the door. So congratulations. You got exactly what you wanted. No more hovering husband asking inconvenient questions. No more suffocating marriage holding you back. No more my face in your business. She picked up her bags, and for a moment I thought she might actually leave without another word. But she stopped at the door and looked back. What if I want to come back? Then you'll want in one hand and regret in the other, I said. See which one fills up first. She stood there for another few seconds, probably hoping I'd crack. When I didn't, she opened the door. This isn't over, she said. Yes, it is, I replied. It's been over for months. You just didn't bother to tell me. The door closed behind her, and for the first time in half a year, my condo was actually peaceful. No tension, no lies, no walking on eggshells around someone who'd made it clear she didn't want me there. I poured myself a drink and sat down in my living room. My living room, in my condo, with my name on the deed. She'd wanted me out of her space. Mission accomplished. Too bad for her that getting out of her space meant she had to get out of my home. Over the next few weeks, my phone buzzed constantly. Texts, calls, voicemails. Thursday, 47 texts. Friday, 23 calls. I blocked her number after the first day. Saturday, flowers arrived with an apology card. I donated them to a nursing home down the street. Sunday, her mother called. I was polite but firm. Mrs. Hartman, you should ask your daughter about Greg. The call stopped after that. I spent those weeks reclaiming my life. I joined a gym, started going regularly. I updated the condo, removing the decorative choices she'd made, repainting the bedroom a color I actually liked. I met a friend for coffee and explained the situation. He looked at me carefully. You seem lighter, he said. I realized he was right. It was like I'd been carrying a 100-pound weight and hadn't even known it. 5 weeks after she left, my doorbell rang on a Friday evening. I opened it to find Jen standing there, looking exhausted. Her eyes were red and puffy. She was carrying an overnight bag. Can we talk? She said. Please, just 5 minutes. We have nothing to discuss, I said. Everything goes through lawyers now. It didn't work out with Greg, she said, the words tumbling out. He said he wasn't ready for commitment. He kicked me out. I almost laughed. Shocking. The man who was willing to sleep with someone else's wife turned out to have integrity issues. Who could have seen that coming? It's not funny, she snapped. but there was no real fire behind it. "You're right," I said. "It's not funny. It's predictable." "I made a mistake," she said quietly. "A huge mistake. I want to come home." "This isn't your home anymore. You gave up that right when you decided our marriage was something you could throw away for a few months of excitement." "But I love you," she said, and tears started falling. "I never stopped loving you." "No, you didn't love me. You loved the security I provided. You loved having a husband to fall back on while you explored your options. You loved knowing I'd be here waiting like a faithful dog while you had your fun." I straightened up, making it clear the conversation was ending. "But love, real love, doesn't treat people the way you treated me. Real love doesn't lie every single day for months. Real love doesn't call someone hovering for caring." "I was confused," she said desperately. "I was going through something and I handled it wrong. But we can fix this." "There's nothing to fix. You weren't confused. You were selfish. You wanted everything your way, and you thought you could manipulate me into accepting whatever scraps you felt like giving me." She tried to step closer, but I moved back. "What about forgiveness?" she asked. "What about second chances?" "Forgiveness is for people who are sorry for what they did, not sorry they got caught. And second chances are for people who deserve them. You had your chance. You had 7 years of chances. You used every single one of them to lie to me, disrespect me, and cheat on me. So that's it." Her voice rose. "You're just going to throw away everything we had." The irony was perfect, almost beautiful. "I'm not throwing away anything," I said. "You already did that. You threw it away the first time you went to dinner with him. You threw it away every time you lied about where you were. You threw it away when you told me to get out of your space." "Wait," she said quickly. "What am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go?" I looked at her for a long moment. A month ago, that question would have broken my heart. Now it just reminded me of how little she'd cared about our marriage when she was busy destroying it. "You know what's funny?" I said. "For months, you acted like I was the worst thing that ever happened to you. Like being married to me was some kind of prison sentence. Like my presence in your life was suffocating and hovering and unbearable." I paused, making sure she was really listening. "So congratulations. You're free. No more suffocating marriage. No more hovering husband. No more having to look at my face every day." "That's not what I wanted," she whispered. "It's exactly what you wanted. You just thought you could have it without giving up the benefits of being married to me. You thought you could treat me like garbage and I'd still be here to catch you when your boyfriend decided he didn't want the responsibility." The words hit her hard. She took a step back, finally understanding there was no coming back from this. "I hope it was worth it," I said, and started to close the door again. "Please," she said one last time. "Don't do this." I stopped and looked at her through the gap in the door. "I'm not doing anything. You did this. You made every choice that led to this moment. You decided our marriage wasn't worth your loyalty. You decided I wasn't worth your respect. You decided to throw away 7 years for a few months of excitement." I opened the door wide one last time so she could see me clearly. "So don't stand there and ask me not to do this. You already did this. I'm just living with the results of your choices." The door closed with a solid click. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, getting fainter as she walked away. Through the window, I watched her get into a car I didn't recognize, probably a friend's. The taillights disappeared down Pike Street, and I realized something. For the first time in months, I felt completely at peace. 3 months later, I was at Pike Place Market on a Saturday afternoon with someone new. Claire was a graphic designer I'd met through a friend. We'd been seeing each other for about 6 weeks, taking things slow, seeing where it went. She was standing next to me, laughing at something I'd said, as we picked out ingredients for dinner. That's when I saw Jen across the market, near the famous fish-throwing display. She saw me at the same time and froze. She looked tired, older somehow, though it had only been 3 months. She was carrying shopping bags from discount stores, wearing jeans and a plain t-shirt. Nothing like the put-together marketing consultant I'd known. Claire noticed me looking and followed my gaze. "Ex-wife?" she asked quietly. "Just someone I used to know," I said. Jen started to walk toward us, but I took Claire's hand and turned in the opposite direction. I didn't look back. Claire and I continued shopping, talking about what to make for dinner, laughing as we navigated the crowded market. And I realized that this easy companionship with someone who actually wanted to be here, was what I'd been missing. Jen had called me hovering for paying attention. She'd called me suffocating for caring. She'd demanded space and then got angry when I actually gave it to her. She'd wanted me out of her face, and when I finally complied, she couldn't handle the reality of what that meant. The divorce had been finalized 2 weeks ago, uncontested, just like the lawyer predicted. She'd signed the papers without argument. What choice did she have? The evidence was overwhelming, and dragging it out would only make things worse for her. I heard through mutual friends that she was living with her sister, sleeping on a couch, trying to get back on her feet. Greg had blocked her number after she showed up at his place one too many times. The affair partner who'd seemed so exciting when it was forbidden had turned out to be exactly what I knew he was. Someone who wanted fun, not responsibility. But that wasn't my problem anymore. Claire squeezed my hand. "You okay?" "Yeah," I said, and I meant it. "I'm good." That evening, as we cooked dinner together in my condo, I thought about the past few months. About how Jen had tried to make me feel like I was the problem. Like caring about my own marriage was somehow a character flaw. Like paying attention to obvious lies made me controlling. But here's what I'd learned. When someone tells you your love is suffocating, they're really saying they don't want your love. When they call you hovering for asking questions, they're really saying they don't want to answer. And when they tell you to get out of their space often enough, eventually you figure out that maybe your presence belongs somewhere else entirely. Jen had wanted space. She'd gotten all the space in the world. The fact that it was lonely space, empty space, regretful space, that wasn't my problem anymore. After all, she was a grown woman. She could figure it out. She'd wanted me to stop hovering. So I did. I stopped hovering over her life, stopped caring about her choices, stopped being invested in someone who clearly didn't want me there. And in doing so, I'd found something better. Peace, self-respect, a future with someone who didn't see my attention as a burden. Funny how the wrong person ended up alone. Dear listeners, that's our ending. If it resonated, subscribe to support the channel. See you next time.